What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. Side note, happy Father's Day, everyone. And hopefully everyone had a good weekend. I did get burnt like crazy. I'm sure you can see that. So tomorrow's going to be rather painful for me. But hopefully this upcoming week, things do get better with the stock market and everything. But starting off with the data points. So on Monday, I do want to bring this up. Normally, it's not that big of a deal and the market doesn't overly care, but we've seen it really shake things up, and that's the 20-year bond auction. So there was, I think it was like a month ago when there was, or 2 weeks ago, there was absolutely no demand whatsoever. And so of course, discounts had to have been placed, yields go up, market freaked the hell out. People were talking about Armageddon and everything. So that one, even though, like I said, is not normally that big of a deal, just watch for that one. So that one's going to be coming out at noon on Monday. But aside from that, on Tuesday, you do have retail sales. You also do have manufacturing data coming out on Tuesday and also Friday. So both days, just kind of watch for that. And then aside from those, you do have on Wednesday, the Fed interest rate decision. And so it is fair to assume that there won't be any cut. And most likely, I think the earliest might be September. But what Powell says afterwards is going to really move the market. And it's kind of interesting, right? So we've had very strong data, and unfortunately, strong data doesn't really justify rate cuts. And then you have also at the same time, inflation, essentially a lot of the key data kind of showing that it's going down. So you kind of have the Feds stuck in limbo. So it's going to be interesting to hear what Powell's viewpoint is. And so the market obviously will move because of that. Aside from the data points, companies unveiling their earnings, nothing really crazy that's going to move the market, unfortunately. But there's also a couple of things that's going to impact the market over and above everything that I did mention. One is a potential update between China and the States. So I think everyone's been very patient on how that whole negotiation process ended up and what type of deal did the States get. So that obviously is going to really move the market. If we don't hear anything this week, then anticipate the market to get a little bit antsy and most likely assume the worst, that things aren't going according to plan. So again, that could really impact the market. And then last but not least, yes, there's a hell of a lot of things impacting the market. You have the whole Middle East type of scenario that's playing out between Israel and Iran. And so far from what I've seen, I'm clearly not an expert with that type of war and kind of who's involved and all that other stuff, but it does, based on the headlines, things seem to be heating up. As well, I did see that Iran did cease a lot of its oil production. So anticipate oil to really spike like crazy on Monday. And again, with all this escalation, you could see the market really get jittery and start to go down because both countries, Iran and Israel, seem to be trying to group in other countries such as the States, UK, and so I think a lot of which people are somewhat worried about this becoming a world war. So again, that all is going to impact the market. Aside from that, and specific to SoFi, there isn't really anything planned for them. No fireside chats, no conferences, nothing or anything like that. So it is just going to piggyback off of the broader market. Shorts. So going into this upcoming week, 12.92% of the free float is being shorted. Works out to be 140 million shares overall are being shorted. Cost to borrow average, 0.48. You can kind of see shorts have been returning a substantial amount over the last little bit. So that's kind of a good thing. You can see that from the purple line right there that I'm kind of hovering over. But nonetheless, if it is geopolitical type of issues, anticipate shorts to kind of pull back and not really double down. If it is more linked to specific data points, like such as Powell, shorts historically do increase with negative kind of sentiment. So if Powell does come out, really shakes the market and says, hey, you know what, we're not going to cut anything for at least the foreseeable future, blah, 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 and the economy is strong, no need to cut rates, yeah, anticipate shorts to pretty much double down based on that. So just something to keep in mind. As far as the options go, you do see the bulls anticipating for it to be roughly around that $15 range, and then the bears for it to be sub roughly $13.50 to $13. So a little bit where we closed on Friday, so it is kind of middle ground, so we'll have to wait and see. But with it closing exactly at $14.09 on Friday, that does mean that the $14 and below strike prices are in the money. So 11,000 at that 14, 3,000 at 13.50, and then 2,000 at that 13. So you might see a little bit bump up on Monday, but as I mentioned on my Friday video, there was some abnormal transactions after hours on the dark pool. So 10.1 million, 1.25, 3.5, and 1.7. If you kind of do the rough calculation, that does essentially add up to what market makers would have to cover. So again, you might see a little bit of a bump up, but it is fair to assume that market makers already covered that. But this upcoming week is a monthly chain, so that typically does result in higher kind of volumes. So you have 11,000 at that 12, 11,000 at 13, 5,000 at 13.50, 20,000 at 14, 12,000 at 14.50, and then 49,000 at 15. So essentially, if SoFi come Friday does get close to some of these strike prices, some of the heavy ones, I'd say like 14 and above, then you might see shorts get a little bit active just to kind of suppress it, as what we've seen in the past. So just somewhat be aware of that. But going into this upcoming week with that 14.09 trading between this R1 and the pivot, 13.50 is going to be a strong support. 14.40 is going to be the next strong target / resistance, followed by 14.96. But aside from that, obviously with there being no real SoFi specific data points or anything coming out, then you won't really see any new analyst ratings, logically, of course. But on the actual chart going into this upcoming week, you have that 100-day moving average at 13.37. So that's going to be, again, something to really watch for, aside from the fib levels I did bring up. And then you have that 50 and also 200-day moving averages, very tight knit at that 12.75 to 12.73 range. So that's going to be pretty much the line in the sand. So if SoFi does get close to that, I do anticipate most likely for it to kind of hold and to cause a nice nice reversal. But as I've mentioned in the past, I think shorts have been really returning a significant amount, waiting for their opportunity to strike. We've seen it time and time again when SoFi does get to these kind of key moving averages, shorts do tend to double down. So if for whatever reason SoFi does get to kind of that range, just again, similarly watch for shorts. So at the end of the day, given everything that may or may not impact the market and SoFi, I do realistically feel that it will be closing between this pivot and this S1. So a little bit of a pullback, that's normal. Again, going based on the technicals, it does signal that there is a little bit more downside coming, but I do feel like that 100-day moving average is going to be, as what we've seen, the saving grace for SoFi. So let me know your viewpoint. Where do you see things going? Do you think that this upcoming week is going to be all hell breaks loose, or do you think it's just a nice fugazi and things will just kind of move up? People will forget about everything that has happened and start to have higher highs. So what's your general 2 cents? Hopefully everyone's having an amazing weekend. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon and get buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.